and welcome to my video. My name is Rosie. I am a sustainability and slow fashion blogger based in North Cornwall. I'm so excited to be joining you for the Craft Eat Smile online festival, and I feel incredibly honoured to have been asked to participate. I have been asked to discuss the kind of things that I talk about on my blog, Instagram and YouTube channel. So with that in mind, I'm going to be splitting this video into 3 parts. They are sustainability, slow fashion and vegetarianism. I have lots of little tips and tricks on these subjects, and I will be sharing some of them with you today. I am known for wittering on quite a bit, so instead of doing that, I'm just going to get straight into the video. That being said, if you do enjoy what you see, I'd appreciate it a lot if you could show me some love over on my social media. It'd honestly mean the world, and it would be lovely to see you over there. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. So the first topic is sustainability, which is obviously such a huge thing that I can't solve it in this video. So we're going to pare it back a little bit, step back a bit, and we're going to talk about ways in which you can make your sustainable, low-waste intentions a habit. Once something becomes habitual, we obviously stop thinking about the fact we're even doing it, and it allows us to progress on to the next stage. So if you nail the little tips, the little foundations, then you're able to keep growing on your journey. Okay, so the first thing seems very simple, and it's something that lots of people talk about all the time, but I think it's one of the fundamentals really, and that is making small household swaps. I think this is something that I find really important because lots of people care about the environment and lots of people want to be more sustainable, but it's not part of their everyday life, so then they don't really do anything about it. They're aware of it, but they're not really acting on it. But as soon as you start surrounding yourself with low waste, sustainable alternatives, it becomes part of your lifestyle and you are kind of face to face with it every day. It may seem like very small, menial changes, but I think the best place to start is small. So the sooner really basic things like natural deodorant or shampoo bars just become part of your everyday life, the more you start to notice other ways you can make changes. So I think these small swaps, no matter how insignificant some people might think they are, they're definitely the best place to start. So my next tip is something that was really important to me, and it's really helped me progress and learn, and that is find and build a community. I think it's so important to find a community of like-minded people, no matter what it is that you're passionate about, and especially if you live maybe in a household or an area where people aren't as aware of their impact or aren't as passionate about it as you, it can be really valuable to find this support and camaraderie in others. For me, I found this on Instagram, and I have lots of friends on there who are in the sustainability community, and we all talk together, support each other and learn from each other. I know it's not possible right now, but there are also opportunities to join environmentalist groups, sustainable groups that might be in your area. I will say that while being part of these communities is really important and can be very fulfilling, just remember that there are people on all different stages of their sustainability journey, because it is a journey. You don't get to a destination, but you're constantly progressing and learning. And there will be people that maybe have been part of the community for longer than you, and I think especially online people can appear perfect, and I know for a fact that I only portray a certain portion of my life on Instagram, and so do they. So don't compare yourself against people who you don't actually know what goes on in their life, you don't know everything about them, you don't know their situation. My next tip is something that I really probably should do more, but I've done a bit of, and what I have done of it is super helpful, and that is to read. Now, if you're not a big reader, stay with me because there are loads and loads of other options, but I just find reading books about sustainability, the climate crisis, and what we can do as individuals is really useful for me. Now, there are loads and loads of books out there, and of course you don't have to buy them new, you can buy them secondhand from places like A Books, or you can borrow them from libraries. And of course you don't need to read to have this information. There are also tons of documentaries, YouTube is full of advice and resources, there are podcasts, there are blogs, so just know that the information is out there, it's just waiting for you to go and find it. I know I've kind of touched on some really basic elements of sustainability and of starting off your journey, but I think that is the best way to start. And my most key point that I have to remind myself of all the time is that everybody's sustainability looks different. it doesn't matter how hard you try, what you do, your sustainability and what you are able to achieve will look different to everybody else. And that is because we all live in completely different environments, we all have different financial situations, living situations, we live in different climates, we live in different cultures. And so things are different for all of us, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it means that we're able to learn from each other and we're able to progress in our own ways. And sustainability isn't a one-size-fits-all situation. Being sustainable for you looks different than being sustainable for somebody else. I think that's really important to remember because sustainable social media can become a little bit judgy, and I think it can forget the fact that not everybody has access or the means to live the same kind of lifestyle that they do. So yeah, that's just something to remember. So I really raced through sustainability. So now we're going to move on to slow fashion, which is my favourite thing to talk about. Again, slow fashion and sustainability within the fashion industry is a huge topic, and I just don't have time to talk about it all today. So I'm going to give you 5 pieces of advice that I would give to somebody who approached me and asked how they would start getting into and understanding slow fashion. Now, the first thing to understand is that slow fashion isn't a type of fashion in the same way that fast fashion is a type of clothing that we all are kind of aware of what it is. If you're not aware of what it is, I'm going to tell you now. Fast fashion companies are people such as Boohoo, Misguided, Pretty Little Thing, ASOS, Zara, H&M. They're brands that tend to use unsustainable materials such as polyester, and their clothing is created in predominantly sweatshops, and they are known for underpaying their workers and treating them unfairly. So that is fast fashion, and then slow fashion is almost a response to it, but it's something that's been happening for far longer. Slow fashion is the way that we used to make clothes. It is making things with care, with sustainable materials, and making things that are destined to last and intended to last, whereas fast fashion is selling as many clothes in the quickest time as possible. Fast fashion trends tend to last about a week, and I've heard it said that fast fashion has 52 seasons a year where we used to have 4. So that's the difference. Slow fashion is more of a mentality and a movement than a type of creating clothes, in that you don't have to buy clothes in order to be slow fashion, if that makes sense. So I'll get into my 5 tips because the first one might explain that a little bit better. So my first tip is buy less. I think this can be very difficult to comprehend when you first transition into slow fashion, because we are so used to being advertised and constantly told that we need to buy new things by fast fashion companies. When people quit fast fashion and move to slow fashion, you often see them over consuming still, but instead they're buying from charity shops or buying from small businesses. While they may be having less of an environmental impact, it's only slightly less, and actually the overconsumption is the issue in fast fashion. The demand is there, which is why the clothes are mass produced. So part of slow fashion is buying what we need rather than buying because we feel like we have to. So yeah, that is one of my main pieces of advice that I'd give to somebody who just started shopping and thinking more sustainably. Just buy less. You don't actually need it. You already have a wardrobe full of clothes, I'm guessing. You don't need to do hauls from charity shops in the same way you didn't need to do hauls from Boohoo. I've seen people try to combat this by doing things such as allowing themselves to buy one new piece of clothing a month, but something that I find really useful is training yourselves to find the value in the clothes that you already own. I made a big long YouTube video about this called How to Shop Your Wardrobe. I think it might be an American trend because I've seen it called shopping your closet a lot, but basically the idea is that you go through your wardrobe and you try and find new inspiration from the clothes that you already own. You can use tools such as Pinterest and Instagram to find outfit inspiration, and if you'd like to go and watch that video, I think it could be quite a useful resource if you've never done anything like that before. But I found outfits in my wardrobe that I'd never even thought of before, so you probably will as well. And it also really helps you have more appreciation for your clothes and think more imaginatively and use things like mood boards and colour wheels to make the most out of what you own. The most sustainable thing you can do is use what you have, and that translates into our wardrobes as well. So in complete contradiction to that, My next point is support small businesses. So in a society where people expect clothes for £5, I think small businesses end up underpricing themselves a lot in an attempt to compete in those markets. It's such a shame because the love and attention to detail in pieces far outshines that of fast fashion. Now, I'm not saying that the people who make fast fashion clothing are unskilled, because they're not. It's the conditions that they're forced to work in are just abhorrent and they're not paid properly. And so I think if we put attention into slow fashion, proving that we value ethics and sustainability, it sends a message. Also, small businesses, there's just something about buying from a small business. You don't get the same kind of, it just feels so much more personal. Often you have the ability to have things customised or tailored to you. I've never felt the way that I do receiving things from small businesses as I did when I bought from Amazon. It's just not the same. So support your local, small, sustainable businesses. Now, my next tip number 3, is something that could take some people years. So don't worry if this isn't something that you can pinpoint straight away, because I know it's taken me a while. And that is nurturing a sense of style. We've kind of been brainwashed to believe that we need to follow trends that are in the media, and it's fast fashion companies grab you with that because they have trends that are so fleeting but really take over society in the short time that they're around. I mean, can you remember cycling shorts? How big they were? How many people are still wearing cycling shorts on a regular basis? But everybody had them. So many people grabbed onto that trend, but it was never going to last. I think it's important to develop a sense of style and pay attention to your sense of style, because it transcends the trends. Rhyming. In that you stop buying things because they're popular and you start really thinking about whether you enjoy an item. It helps you know that when you buy something, or whether you're drawn to something, it's because you really love it and not because everybody else is wearing it. So it limits the amount that you buy, and it helps you invest in pieces that are going to last, hopefully, a lifetime. I think this is something that can be difficult for people who are just stepping out of fast fashion, because trends are a huge part of it, and when you shop fast fashion, the website changes so often that all you're able to buy is what's currently popular. I remember there was a point in time when the majority of tops were missing shoulders. It was just like the trend at the time, but you couldn't, it was so difficult to find something that didn't look like that, which is frustrating. Slow fashion tends to not follow the fast fashion trends, because the idea of, like, for small businesses and independent sustainable companies, their intention is for your clothes to last forever, not just for the next month. So slow fashion brands tend to be either more classic or very niche down into like specific things that are people's style. So I just think that's a really fun one that you can start really developing a sense of style, and it's so cool, and it's something that I'm still working on. I'm not 100% there yet, but I've really been enjoying as part of my slow fashion journey. Next up is something that I feel like a lot of us have lost the ability to do, or maybe we never had the ability because we weren't taught, and that is repairing your clothes. We live in such a throwaway, disposable culture, which comes hand in hand with consumerism, and it's having such a damaging effect on the environment. We really need to start fixing stuff. Like, just because something's got a hole in it or a rip in it doesn't mean that it's done for. It means that you have to put a little bit of work in to get it back. I know there are probably loads of you out there who are a dab hand with a sewing machine, and honestly I applaud you, but I just don't have that skill, and it's something that I am really looking to learn. Now, by repairing things, I don't just mean sewing stuff though either. I mean giving things a new lease of life. So you can upcycle your clothes, dye your clothes. I've got a little bag of stuff here that I've just got to work through, because they're clothes that I still want, but they just need little things doing to them, and then I can have them back in my life again and wear them again. I think we need to get out of the habit of thinking that things are ruined if they're stained or they've got a hole in them. No, there are other things that we can do with them, and they shouldn't be destined for landfill. So I just think that's something really important that we need to try and remember, and to try and bring back repairing your clothes should be cool the same way as re-wearing your clothes should be cool, and I don't really know when it became not a thing. There are so many perfectly good items of clothing going to landfill, and it's just really sad to see, and I think it's something that we need to try and stop in its tracks. And then my last tip is learn. I know I've already said learn, but I think it's so important. The more that you know about fast fashion and the more that you understand how important slow fashion and sustainable fashion is, the more likely you are to do something about it. According to a study that was done in 2020, fast fashion now accounts for 10% global carbon dioxide emissions. 10%. That's alongside oil companies, aviation, the food industry. Fashion is 10% of global emissions. The more that you know about things like this, the more determined you are to stop it and do something about it. And it starts with you. Doing something about it starts with you doing something about it personally in your life. That's the only way that you can progress. So the more that you learn, the more that you know. There are resources everywhere. It's so available. Like, the internet has made things so easy to learn about. The more you know, the more you learn, the more you can do something about it. So that was slow fashion. As you can probably tell, it's something that I'm quite passionate about. I could talk about it all day, but I've had to really limit myself to those 5 things. But if you'd like to see any more about it, head on over to my Instagram, because I talk about slow fashion all of the time. Now, the last little section is about vegetarianism. I don't talk tons about vegetarianism on my blog at the moment, but I have done a couple of posts about it, and it's something that I find really interesting because it's another thing that's different for everybody. I think we're all aware that reducing our meat consumption is vital for our planet, and I'm not saying you have to stop eating meat altogether if you don't want to. I'm not saying you have to be vegan if you don't want to be, but I'm going to talk about vegetarianism and my experiences of vegetarianism a little bit here. So I became vegetarian 5 years ago. I became vegetarian when I went to uni, basically, because I'm one of those people that I've just never really liked meat. Like, I used to pick all the mince out of my spaghetti bolognese and push it on the side of my plate because I just did not like it. So stopping actually eating meat wasn't that difficult for me. As soon as I decided I wasn't going to anymore, I didn't, and that was fine. I know that's not everybody's experience. I know there are people who actually stopping eating the meat is the hardest part, but for me that was the easiest. So people have different experiences, and my experience of actually stopping eating meat wasn't hard at all. But there are some people obviously who love meat but want to do the right thing for the planet. So for you, I'd say it's difficult because there are the 2 things you can do, and they work for different people, and one of them is just quit it and go cold turkey and just stop eating meat altogether, and that might work for some people. And then there are other people who the only way it would work for them is to cut things out slowly, and that's fine. Both of those ways are fine, and neither one is better than the other. I'm also quite lucky in that my family are very understanding. I think there was like an initial, it's going to be harder to cook debacle, but it's never really been a problem. And actually my sister and my dad, neither of them eat meat anymore. Like, it's just not something that's in our house anymore because it just became a habit. Now again, that won't be the experience for everybody. There are some people's families who don't understand. There are some people who meat is a huge part of their culture, and I can't speak for them, but this is my experience, and I actually had quite an easy ride of it. Now, the main thing that I found about being vegetarian is it made my diet far more interesting than it had ever been before. And I think that's because we're constantly under pressure to prove where we get our protein from and prove that we're eating interesting food, and so people make interesting food, and people explore new cultures, and they explore new foods that they never heard of before, and it's brilliant. And I've honestly never had such a varied diet as I do now. So one thing that I really would advise is, if you're thinking of going vegetarian, learn how to cook. I've become a much better cook since I've been vegetarian, and I just say to start with, just learn the basics, like learn how to make a roux, learn how to make a really banging tomato sauce, make those basic things, and then it just makes your life so much easier. I find that meals with meat's for some reason like the main thing, and everything else is a bit bland and boring. The sooner you learn how to season stuff, you learn how to make good sauces, and you learn how to experiment with flavours, it suddenly makes you realise how boring some food is. Especially if you live in the UK, like our diet, if you're a meat eater, can be so dull. I'm not speaking for everyone obviously, but just like from my experience, it can be really boring. I just say explore new cultures, take culinary risks, use cookbooks. One of my favourite books to use is the Wagamama's cookbook because it's just such interesting food. It can be really, really exciting. I also think it really makes a difference to cook with seasonal vegetables because they're always the best when they're in season. I think it really makes a difference to the dish, in my opinion. Use your imagination. I really like cooking really colourful food, so use your imagination, play with different textures, different colours, different flavours. I don't know where this idea that vegetarian and vegan food was boring came from, because it's a lie. It's such a huge lie because I've honestly never had such a good diet as I do now. And I think one thing that I really, really recommend is just taking the time to learn to cook basic things that you already enjoy eating. You don't always have to use meat substitutes. You can find new ways of filling out dishes with like pulses, beans, mushrooms are really good. Be a bit more open-minded. Another thing I was really lucky about is I like all vegetables. I don't have any vegetables I don't like, so it's been very easy for me to eat everything. If it's vegetarian, I'll like it. Be open-minded, broaden your horizons a little bit food-wise, and you're good to go, honestly. Like, flick through cookbooks, watch cooking shows, and just like work out how, if it's a meat dish, how you could make it different and make it good for you. And yeah, I know I have quite an easy, simple experience of vegetarianism. It's been a really easy ride for me, I'll be honest, and I literally already like all food that wasn't meat, so I just cut out the thing that I didn't really like eating. But if you just take culinary risks, use your imagination, and take some time to learn how to cook basic stuff, I honestly think you're good to go. I hope that's helpful in some way, I'm not really sure, but I'm also going to be making a recipe of how to make a really simple seasonal soup. Soup's really good because it's so versatile, you can use whatever is available to you. I also make my own stock, which is a really good way to use your kitchen scraps. It just goes to show that there's value in the things that we would normally just throw away. I don't make the stock in the video, I have a video on my Instagram, and I'll also be writing out a little recipe on how I make my stock. I just thought that a little seasonal soup would be a really good and really cheap way to start incorporating more vegetables into your diet and just seeing how easy it is to make something absolutely delicious. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really, really hope you've enjoyed it because I have. I'd like to once again say thank you so much to Craft Eat Smile for having me and for having me as part of the lineup. It's been an absolute honour, and I really, really hope you enjoy the rest of the festival because from what I can see there is an incredible lineup, and honestly it's amazing to even be considered alongside them. If you've liked what you've seen so far, please don't forget to check me out on social media where there is so much more of all of this in much more detail. I'm a little quiet over on my blog and my YouTube at the moment because I have been doing this, but I'll be back creating very, very soon. I hope you have such a lovely day and stay safe out there. Thank you again for watching. Hello, it's me again. I'm just back to show you a really easy, simple recipe of how to make a very cheap, nutritious, seasonal soup. I only started really making soup when I turned vegetarian. I'm not really sure why, but it's something that I really enjoy and it's really easy and really affordable, and I thought that I would share a little recipe with you today. So today I'm making roasted butternut squash and sweet potato soup, but like I say in the recipe, you can use anything that you have available to you. The more local and the more seasonal the better. I buy my vegetables from our local greengrocers, which means that it's generally really, really cheap and on the whole plastic free, which is something that I look for. I also make my own vegetable stock out of my kitchen scraps. I don't show this in the recipe. I do have a video on my Instagram and I'll write out a really simple basic method that you can screenshot or something if you'd like. The good things about soup are that you can freeze it and you can store it for a long time. You can cook it in bulk and have meals for days, and you can tailor it to your specific likes, dislikes, dietary requirements, all of that kind of thing. So it's a really, really versatile dish that's really useful to be able to make and to have different variations of. This is the first time I've done like a cooking video like this, and I hope it's okay. And yeah, let's just get into the recipe. So for the soup that I'm making today, I'm using a butternut squash, but you can use any seasonal vegetable that you like. Pumpkin, if you can get your hands on it, anything like that. And I got these really cheap from the local greengrocers. So I peel these and then I scoop out the seeds with a spoon. You can reserve the seeds and dry them for planting later in the year. And then you chop them into nice little bite-sized chunks. And then when they're all chopped like pretty uniform, you want them to be quite similar sizes so they cook evenly, pop them into a roasting tin. And then as my second vegetable, I'm using sweet potatoes, which I also got from the greengrocers, but you could use anything. You could use carrots, you could just use regular potatoes, parsnips, anything you can get your hands on that's in season and is fairly cheap. And then I just chop them as close to the same size as the butternut squash as possible so they cook at around the same time. And you want to put them into your roasting tin along with the squash, spread them out, and then I'm using olive oil here, but you can use any kind of oil that you have, vegetable, rapeseed, and then just make sure that everything's covered in the oil, and then I season with salt, pepper. I've added a bit of paprika in here and some marjoram, but you could use thyme, rosemary, anything that's in your cupboard, and some garlic granules as well. Make sure everything's covered in the spices. And then you want to roast the veg in the oven for about 40 minutes. When your veg is nearly cooked, you're going to put a bit of oil into a pan. I'm using olive again, but again you can use whatever you want. And into the pan you're going to add some garlic. I used about 3 cloves, a whole white onion. And then once that's all softened and brown and lovely and smelling delicious, you're going to add in your roasted cooked vegetables, oil and all, everything that's in the roasting pan is going into that pot. So you're just going to leave those veg to sit with the lid on for about 5 minutes, and then comes in the best bit for me. That's the stock. I make the stock myself from my kitchen scraps. There's a reel on my Instagram if you'd like to see how I do it, but I'll also leave a little recipe below. I make about 500 millilitres of stock for the soup and add about half of it at first, and then just let it bubble away, do its thing, reduce a little bit, and then I add the rest of the stock in. Give it a stir, look at that, stunning. And then I pop the lid back on again to just let the veg really soak in all the juices. And then it's time to add the coconut milk. I use a tin of coconut milk, and I'm going to add half of the tin to start with and stir it into the liquid and just let that simmer for a couple of minutes, and then add the rest of the tin. I just let that reduce for a little bit and thicken up, and then it's time to blend. Of course you don't have to blend your soup if you don't want. If you want to have little chunky bits in it, then that's absolutely fine, but I like to blend the soup, especially when it's coconutty. It just feels really decadent and smooth when it's blended. A little sneaky top tip: if your soup is just not thick enough, feels a bit thin, you can add a boiled potato into the soup, and when you blend it, it will just thicken it right up. And of course now's the perfect time to have a little taste test. Then I just pop it on the hob to keep warm until I'm ready to use it. This is just me serving up the soup, give it a little stir. Look at that. I just add a little bit of Alpro soya cream on top of the soup, and then a little sprig of parsley, and then we're all set to go, and it goes down so well every single time. Thank you so much for watching my little soup recipe. It's a really fun thing to make, and it's actually super delicious and went down really well. I also served mine with like homemade little rolls, but that's a whole new recipe for a whole other time. My little recipe cards are going to just be at the end of the video, and if you'd like to screenshot them so you can save them, then you're completely welcome to do that. Remember to get creative with your food and use whatever you like and try new things. Really good, nutritious, tasty food doesn't need to be expensive, and it shouldn't be either, so use what's available to you and have fun with it. I'd like to say thank you again to the festival for having me, and I really hope you've enjoyed spending some time with me, because I've really enjoyed doing this and being part of this as well. Make sure you check out everything else that the festival has to offer. There's an incredible lineup, and just make sure you don't miss out on anything. I hope you have such a lovely day and stay safe.